To give account of your journey in the last year, celebrating the triumphs of the journey through the grace of God, confessing the weaknesses and failings of yesterday, trusting the love of God, discerning your common call into the future, placing yourself as instruments, as servants of that call as you pray for faith and courage. And you decide to invite me to journey with you over the next 3 days. I'm grateful because I have no right to be with you outside of your generous invitation, Mr. President and your executive. I consider this moment a great privilege offered by you as guided by God. There's nothing in our individual lives that inevitably brings us to this moment where we are together in the sacred moment of common worship and service to God and society. I'm born in a small town called Otsoren. Lived my life. There's nothing in that upbringing that gives me the right to be with you here. We are here because at some point in our lives, we encountered the love of Christ and we declared, Diza ndingento yalutho ndicengwa ngelo gazi lakho. In that very moment, we also knew that though we are called as individuals, we are called into a community, and we echoed the words of that old hymn, Singabazalwane, Singabazalwane lusapho lenkosi enkulu, singe sithandana. So I stand here with no right or power but the grace of God that gives the privilege for me to be with you. I respect all of you. It is because of God's love for all of us to be here. So I come with humility and a great sense of respect for what this moment is about. President and your executive, I present my reflections on this Bible study guided by your theme of your consultation, which reads, Agents of Revival in the Church of Christ. My brief understanding of the origin of your theme is the Connectional Church's commitment to reawakening prophetic urgency and agency, reviving the Church of Christ. The right was each on it. And this year, the sub-theme is being the alternative community. And I'm going to leave that to Lady to talk about that. About what it means to be this alternative community. In my understanding, it is within that context that I wish to locate these reflections. In my understanding, the core of agency is the power to act or exert power and influence. The power to or has the capacity to produce an effect, in some way to cause an effect. In the chemistry language, I'm glad by names Tohan. In the chemistry language, it is called chemical reaction, isn't it? Through which an agent exerts impact on parts and particles to act together to produce a transformative result. That's what it is to be an agent. Its presence causes a reaction in which different parts create an energy of change and transformation. Nothing and no place remains the same when it encounters the agent. Nothing and no place remains the same when it encounters the presence of the agent. In other words, the church cannot be the same when you as a guild are present. If it remains the same in your presence, you are not an agent at all. You are a mere presence. Do you know what that means to be a mere presence? When I grew up, there was a nice chemical formula. The question was asked, what is matter? Do you know that question? Do you know what the answer used to be? Anything that has mass and occupies space. That was the definition of matter. So sometimes there are guild or guilders who are simply matter. They have mass and they occupy space. And therefore they are not agents of change. Therefore, we say in his presence cause a reaction so that it causes and animates what it touches so as to energize it for transformation. It is in many ways the antithesis to dormancy and death. In photosynthesis, the electron is animated by the sun to create a reaction with protons and neutrons so as to change the carbon dioxide, changing a dying leaf from brown to life-affirming green, taking away the carbon dioxide and depositing oxygen. If I understand you, Mr. President, what you are saying this Wesley Guild must be now and must embrace its power and exert it in order to produce an effect, to cause a chemical reaction that animates different parts of the church to act together to cause transformative energy, to take the toxic carbon dioxide in the church and the world, the dying brown leaves to which the church goes through, and Christ, and create the green life-affirming leaves that deposit not death-producing carbon dioxide, but life-affirming oxygen. The tragedy of the church is that young people themselves, rather than becoming agents that produces oxygen, they become places that produces carbon dioxide. And the church therefore becomes more toxic in the presence of young people than life-affirming. That young people are in the church, yet the leaves of the church are brown. And all of us know brown leaves only mean death. Therefore, those you want to be part of this Wesley Guild, Mr. President, seem to me that you are asking if they are going to be agents, that they must be able to transform the brown leaves of death of the church into the green leaves that brings oxygen. And for that to happen, Mr. President, you are bringing this consultation together so that young people in this consultation can reflect into this great responsibility. I normally look at young people who celebrate the presence of in our church of 40-40-20. We all know that, isn't it? That's a beautiful thing to have. But you realize the sacred responsibility that you take when you choose to be an agent, when you choose to be invited to be part of that responsibility to bring the church of tomorrow. What that means is that awukwazi usonga izandla ubukele and say to yourself, akumnandanga ecaweni, because the church is now also in your hands. Consistent with the above, Mr. President, you believe that this Wesley Guild must be at the center of the revival of the Church of Christ. If revival is going to mean anything, Mr. President, it must mean a critique of the current state of affairs. You cannot revive that which you have come to believe to be alive. Manpindi. Akavuswa umuntu oleleyo. If you say you want to revive, the first thing you must realize is that you are taking a critical stance. The first point of departure is you are looking around and saying, "Ulelwe up." You are looking around and saying, "Ulele" is a nice way of putting it. You are looking at life and say, "Hey, we are ever failing up." This body that you want to revive in, you must firstly go. It's in mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Is CPR anything? What is the first thing you do when you want to go to do CPR? You check the vitals. And if the vitals are strong, you don't do CPR. See, it's only when the vitals are weak. It's only when the vitals are not there. Then you decide, and therefore you kneel or you go down on your knees and because you're on your knees, you blow your own power and strength and life-giving presence into the one who is about to die. And in that moment of exchange of these energies, you give them the basis to revitalize again. So if we are going to say to ourselves, the church must be revived, we must admit that we are assuming and we are making the claim that the church is dying. That's the first assumption you must realize. And if you say that the church is dying, then you must say to yourself, as part of that journey, I want to look at what is before me and see its dormancy and see its death, and begin to say to myself, I want to bring my own power and my own ways of being into the presence of this which is dying, so that in my presence, that which is dying can be revived again. It's almost like you saying, I'm going to go into a church that is at half dead, if not at ICU, or even a church that's already dead. In many ways, revival is an act of defiance against inability to act and bring power to bear for transformation. In other words, when you revive, you are saying to yourself, dormancy and powerlessness cannot be the last word. Then, because you want to revive, Mr. President, you can't revive without imagination. You can't revive without imagination. You can't revive without the possibility of dreaming new dreams. We can't revive without seeing what is possible for tomorrow. Because one of the great things that is happening, or the great challenges of our church, we think revival is going into the archives and bringing back the old stuff. So that if you are going back and bring the old stuff, we take the old stuff and repackage it. After repackaging it again, started into deodorant. Deodorant. Sayazi moslanto ngoke ngisakhula sayazi ke ngoku lokwana wona ngisakhula into zinamakwaba ayithakuthi Aramis andiyazi ke ngoku into lekoyo ngoba ngeke into lekoyo andizathi Aramis lento, so that noba unuka njani, if ufake iAramis uzanuka ntoni kamnandi. The problem is nanambi disco kemna. The problem is ubanga amakhwapha kayenuka ufake iAramis ngo-12 ebusuku xa ubujayiva imini le yonke wawugqiba ojayiva imini yonke ingene ingoma kaDolly Parton phayana yawungena ngoma Dolly Parton wawusondela kusisana ufuna udansa naye umbona impumlo yakho unyusisa phambili, because no matter how long you deodorize what is not right, emva kwethuba your true order is going to come out. And the problem with the church is that we like to use the word revive, but all we mean is that sawhamba siye kwi-files sikhupha into zakudala sizidasishe, and usimamele thina abantu kudala besecaweni umane usiva sithi le cawa ibingenje, because all you are looking for it is to resuscitate into yakudala. Nani bantu abatsha, in place of using your own imagination, you become caught up in taking the things of yesterday. And when you bring the things of yesterday, nifike apha tokhana nani zawuthetha ngalo, ufika lo onguvice act njengovice wayizolo. We don't need to vice wamadodana in the guild. We need a young person who's able to reimagine what it means to be a greater church of tomorrow. I want to behave. God, I can't resist saying this. Sometimes, as young people, rather than reimagining what it is to bring our presence into the life of God, I'm going to ask a very simple question. From the days of Ikwaito, to the days of Igom, to the days of Amapiano, all of these musical genres have had no impact in the music of the Methodist Church. Manpinde. Anivang. Methodism. Charles Wesley writes songs because he hears the music of the people. And when he hears the music of the people, he takes the melodies of the people, he takes the cries of the people, and then brings them together and write a new song with the theology, yet with the rhythms of the people. Tina, in our reimagination, uyadlula uZex Bandwini, uyadlula uMandoza, uyadlula abakagomke banampo kagomka sewaseKebele. Okay, nodutira. Mampora banampo. Mampinda, bonke aba. We are unable in them to hear the rhythms of the people, to hear in them the cries of the people, to hear in them the joys of the people, and say to themselves, how do we take that melody into the life of the Methodist Church, so that when we dream of new songs, we don't only dream of Lizazitingalako, we don't only dream of Akwaba Sendi Vuma. We're able to come here and say to ourselves, there must be a new sound of our time. There must be a new rhythm of our time. What is it that we hear God is saying to us in the now, so that generations of tomorrow can not only know Lizazitingalako, can know the rhythms of our time, can know the sounds of our time. So that when we give this church to the generations beyond us, we don't give the things we have been given by our parents only. We give them something more. So they're able to look at our generation and say to themselves, they didn't only give us what they got from their parents, they gave us what they were able to create. What is it? What is it that we are reviving? If you only go back to get that which is old and dust it off and give it back to others. What is the new language? What is our language of God? Amen. Yindoni language here is a Cape of Good Hope when it wants to talk about God. Amen. Are you saying to me? Are you saying to me? Are you saying to me? The fact that abantu balapha eKhayelitsha bahlala emikhukwini, doesn't that become a fertile ground for us to see what God is doing nabantu basemikhukwini? Is it not time for us to ask, what is God saying to us, ngabantu balapha eKhayelitsha, who are living in the midst of high crime? And what is it that God is saying to people who come home when they hear the noise outside? They can't go outside because if they go outside, it might be the end of their life. What is the God language for that time? What is the God language? Yamagoduka avela kutsolo, who travel all the way and they come here to look for work. And when they come here and they found work, and they found work in this difficult time, and sometimes babizwa imbatu by the politicians, and they come here, when they are here, what is the God language? Heman kunini sisiva wasikupa ezweni laseJibuti. If we are going to revive, we must ask ourselves deeper questions. Otherwise, let us accept that our generation is not a generation of creativity. It's a generation that sits around and waits for the next day. And therefore, when we revive, we must ask ourselves, what are we reviving to? Revival calls for us to look at the grave of the death of the moment. And when that seems to have power, we're all able to look back into that grave, almost like to hear the words of Jesus to Lazarus when Jesus says, Lazaro, phume engcwabeni, and he comes out. Revival of the Church of Christ means we can look at the church, see how it slumbers towards death, intoxicated by the wine of power mongering amongst itself, blinded by its sense of self-importance. Iqhawa sewisile. Icawa selizile. Ishushu. Kanti ishushu. Itevram. Icawa sewisile. Itevram. Let me put it in much more blunt ways. The Methodist Church is intoxicated by power mongering. Inwile kukuleka ubungangamsha. We are intoxicated. The pursuit of power is at the core of the decline of this church. The sense of wanting to be the big one in the room. The sense of wanting to be the one who is seen. The sense to be, we are so silly when we want power. See, because even there, rather than talking of the same God, we are competing to be the one who's been spoken about after the service. In the Wesley Guild, it seems like there's something wrong. It seems like ubangabazange waphatha apha wisile awungomuntu. And sometimes that intoxication, sorry bafundisi bam, that intoxication also comes to us befundisi. We become abefundisi because of the power it projects. So this church is not only intoxicated by that, this church is also blinded by its own sense of self-importance. By its own sense of self-importance. Hey man, siyixawe ye method. Singeqawe nje ye method. Yonke into esiyenzayo funeka itransportwe into others. And nothing from others come to us. Isinayimesi sibethwe church ngosi. Babengenampambam echurch. Woke banompambam because amawisile atheni. We are so self-obsessed and blinded. Not only self-obsessed and blinded, we even think the noise we make is worship. This church is fractured by its divisions and strife. Diva ngoku into abangaba kuzayinta kwikomite entsha ngoku andithi. I can't imagine when do you elect? Where do you elect? Where? Consultation. So I can't imagine consultation last year in January. As we are all preparing Bangu Vice, even for the new tension, as we see the elections. I can you tension. And abantu bakokiselane. Atonundu dinawe. We are fractured as a church by our divisions and strife. We are impoverished by a lack of vision. We are impoverished by a lack of vision. I don't want to embarrass this executive. I share up upon. I have met many leaders who are in the church who are leading an organization where there's no vision. And people make a mistake to think a theme is a vision. A theme is not a vision. It's a slogan to galvanize yourself. A vision is that thing that allows you to see where you are and see the greatness of where you can be. And because you know the greatness of where you can be, you're inspired to act in the now, never tiring, never giving up, because deep in your heart you know there's something great that waits for us. They can't leave Egypt without being told we're taking you to a land of milk and honey. And therefore, we live in a situation where there is too much noise around themes, but lack of noise around vision. And therefore, we come to our meetings, live excited. Why? Because ubani we kila la tekisi ngala theme. What has that got to do with who we can be tomorrow? So as this church, indeed we are. I also say here that we are not only impoverished by lack of vision. I say we are infected by the virus of moral decay. We are infected by the virus of moral decay. I'm going to speak to you directly. I come from the Wesley Guild. I'm a product of the Wesley Guild. Indeed, I know, and I'm going to speak to you directly. I wish this thing was not known, but because I want to speak to you alone. I know as a fact. No, I know as a fact that sometimes our brother spend their time guilding because Gosisi are nice. Probably the same happens on the other way around too. I know that. I also know that in the life of Sister Abaninzi, they have never been hurt more than being hurt in the church. I know it. And some of us have been perpetrators of that hurt. And I know that. I know that. I know that. But there were things that were simply non-acceptable. Akho gilda ibizawuza egildini. And we just sit around and do nothing. There was no gilder who will come and be vulgar egildini athuka abantu ngomama babo and nothing happens. There was a line that we drew and say, Bantu Bengosi, we are all sinners, we are all weak. But there are things that must remain sacred to us so that the moral character of the guild is not lost along the way. And when the Wesley Guild, when the Church of Christ loses its moral character, where people can say, if I want to be an example, I want to go there because when I'm there, because there, my mom, this Sam is being shaped. But when you come into the Wesley Guild and we see that across Milos is shaped why there is no moral character of this movement. And then what happens is when parents finish parents refuse for their children to join the Wesley Guild. Because there's a lack of moral character. I'm not talking about moral behavior. We all can make mistakes. But there must be something that says, no matter in the presence of these, I can be recorrected again. Let me be frank and be straightforward to you. We can't have a brother who beat up their girlfriends and they're still part of the guild. Ngawathanda amadoda ke ayathanda umana ukuthi it goes both ways. The majority is no brother. And what I'm really trying to say, forget the examples. What I'm really trying to say to all of us, if we are going to be agents of transformation, we must work hard to rebuild the moral character of the Wesley Guild. Somebody who joins the Wesley Guild, from the moment you are part of what we call Christian service, isn't it? And let me tell you what I used to know. We used to have what we call consecration, isn't it? Is that what I'm saying? The consecration is when we spend time asking God, please don't make the mistake of thinking consecration is about singing hymns. Don't make the mistake of thinking that the consecration is about reading scripture. Don't even think the consecration is about who preaches best so that we are ready for revise. So I'm going to talk about this. Consecration is about opening the soul of the young person into the presence of God, so that that presence of God shapes the soul of this young person. So don't give any and in our midst we walk with you. When we sing a song with you, we don't only sing the melody, we bring the words into your space. As you see it in designing and we are saying to you, in the presence of God, you have no special place except that you are loved by God. And when we say that, we have to shape you to become the best person you can be as God wants you to be. So in Ngoma, in Chumayelo, in Mitandazo are a way of shaping you. They're not activities we do. And we had what we call a comradeship. A comradeship, and remember, was meant to say, to help you say to yourself, who am I in the midst of others? Who am I in the midst of others? And what we begin to tell you as a Methodist in Pioneer comradeship, we say all of us need to be. What does that mean? That means ungumoni njengomntu kufika phakathi egildini ucinga uba we must tend to you. So we're shaping you to be, when you say comradeship. Then we had what we call community service, community development. We then said to ourselves, we cannot be a church in isolation. We must exert our life in the service of others. And then give you a good culture. Creativity. That means culture thing. We call it culture because we wanted to make sure that we all know that we're a product of some people. So we then said to ourselves, if you are going to do that, because of that, we are, as a church, getting individual, we are, the last thing I want to say, go on this one and move on, is simply to say, we are caught up in what I call self-centered religiosity. What do I mean by that? It's in Langom. Zizekum. Which was Langom? It's in Apa. Apa. Our church has been blinded by this idea that
kufuneka siproduce citizens for heaven. Sihleli nje sifuna abantu abaready ezulwini. Everything we work on is to try to make you ready for heaven. And what do we do then? As long wena utheni usindisiwe. Enye nenye into sisini sayibona endleleni. If you remember 2 conferences ago, President Bishop Purity Malunga tried to remind us of the danger of that. Do you remember that? Do you remember the theme she reminded us on? Do you remember the theme? No holiness but social. Please go back into that theme and reflect on it, because it's a call to change that. Therefore, we who are going to be there for these agents, we are saying, Mr. President, that through all of this, you're asking the church to wake up from the grave, to be revived again, because the church can be a better place to do so. Mr. President, I've already spoken about the Wesley Guild, but I want to end around the Wesley Guild about this so that I can quickly move on and conclude my presentation for today. Mr. President, if the Wesley Guild is unable to take seriously, even the church, to take seriously the burdens of being a young person in South Africa today, it is wasting its time. Karl Marx has a wonderful saying. Karl Marx has a saying that says, what does it say? Religion is the opium of the oppressed. What does he mean by that? What he means is that an empty religion creates a hiding place for people to self-delude themselves that things are better when things are not better. We must ask the question, and I'm glad that we prayed for the mental illness yesterday, isn't it? I'm glad that we prayed for education thing. But let me say this straight to you. My understanding of prayer is simply this. Prayer is not the words you say. It is the actions you do after you've said the words. Let me repeat that. Prayer is not the things you say. It is the actions you do after you have prayed. So if you pray for mental illness in South Africa, you must ask yourself the question, what is the Wesley Guild doing to respond to those in its midst who are going through depression? We must ask the question, what is the Wesley Guild doing with those amongst us who are suicidal? You must ask yourself the question, why is it almost impossible for somebody at Guilding to come and say, yesterday or to now, I'm thinking of killing myself? You must ask the question, why is it that we laugh when people show us signs of schizophrenia? We must ask the question, why do we say to people who have attempted to kill themselves, why do we say that they are weak? We must ask themselves a question, people who go into this moment where they hide. You know that concept called loneliness in the midst of noise. Before nisike ebuilding, nikenisbuza usister ubrother yintoni menzibanga zebuilding. And are you able then to struggle with those things? Secondly, does he want to give the love for a second? First base second. Does it ask the question, how many social workers exist here? Do you ask that question? Does the Wesley Guild go to a quarterly meeting and say in the quarterly meeting, this building of ours stands empty the whole week? Why can't we say to those who can do social work, those who can do some pastoral counseling, why can't we say to them, on Tuesday, anybody in this community who feels suicidal, you can come to this church? You can come here, you are going to find somebody who will listen to your story. You are going to find somebody who will journey with you. It is nice to pray about education. And I command you to pray about education. But why is it that Andrew Lusaba stands empty on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, when there are children roaming the street with nobody to help them do homework? Why? When we've got teachers in our pews. Why is it, if Wesley Guild wants to be an agent of transformation in the life and the work of education, why can't we say, all retired teachers around this area, we ask you to gather. When you gather, what is your teaching skill? I teach English, I teach math, Why can't we say to the community, come to our church on every Friday afternoon, every Saturday afternoon, come to our church. If you struggle with algorithms, we will help you. If you struggle with mathematics, we will help you. If you struggle with English, we will help you. Why is it that we're satisfied with just praying and doing nothing after that? President, this is how I'm going to do the text tomorrow. And I'm going to ask this question to all of you. I hear in the news every day, every moment, crime is out of control. People don't go to work. People are unable to open businesses. I hear that there are people who are being abducted. I hear businesses are unable to operate well. And who is the police commissioner here? Did you see that? Did you see that? We are complaining about crime, isn't it? And I'm asking the very simple question, who is the police commissioner? And we don't know who it is. I asked the question. And as I asked the question, I asked the question to us and say to all of us, the crime of Khayelitsha, the crime of Cape Town, the crime of Ashton, the crime of Namakwaland, the crime of Worcester, the crime of Epeng is not going to end simply the police act. It's going to end when we stand up. Lay leader. And be them obviously. We complain about crime. Let me preamble this by making a joke. Mtata, outside in a certain village, I won't call name. Who call Amampene? I call your back. So Amampene. Now the time they went about Amampene, and they say, "Yo, Amampene." Then I say, "Kai, this crime thing is such a problem. Long thing with protection fee is such a problem. You know what we've decided to do tonight in Amampene? We have discovered in over one of the kingpins that a protection ring. All we did, the company discount Council protected him without us paying. And we see that people who give us money and honor. Siyamazi uba lo muntu akaphangeli. Lo mfo akana-business. Lo mfo has no capacity to give us these thousands of rands. But what do? We take it. Sometimes we know that he's the cause of pain. Sometimes we know but because we what do? We take it. And the worst thing we do, siyayithatha simphakamisa. Sithi ebantwini becawe sifuna abantu abanje abayidlisayo imali phi ecaweni. Whilst the people on the ground know le mali niyithathayo apha yimali which is produced by the cries of many a child. That lords do the same. Corrupt politicians do the same. And now criminals have found a nice hiding place in the church. They can wash their conscience by saying, rather than saying us as a church, if we are going to be agents of change, we must be able to say to those who bring the money, if we don't want you a church. Because when we take your money and wash the blood in your hands to our prayers, we are betraying the call of Christ. And when we do that, therefore, we create a deep, deep difficulty for ourselves. And Mr. President, tomorrow, in the dealing with the text, I'm going to explore 3 areas and then we'll explore them tomorrow. The first area, Mr. President, I'm going to explore tomorrow is agents transitioning into other agents. That's what I'm going to explore tomorrow. Just to give you a peek, the first argument I want to make is simply this, lay leader. If you want to be an agent of God's transformation, you must always remember there's only one God. We'll explore that tomorrow. The second thing I will explore tomorrow with you as we engage is that the God who brings agents into being use other agents. And what I'm going to explore tomorrow in the reading that we have tomorrow is an agent being brought out, an agent of a child, of a son, of a young man being born out of a womb of an old age unbearing soul. I'm going to explore with you the transition of an agency from a womb of a woman who can't bear children into the presence of a young man who becomes an agent for the future. The third thing I want to explore with you tomorrow, just to give you a peek, is to say, when you're an agent of transformation, you begin a new song. Awusaculi ingoma zakudala, ucula ingoma ezintsha. And I'm going to help you understand. The Bible we read esiXhoseni ithe umthandazo kabani? Kahana ngivilemos. The proper translation says the song of Hannah. That's what the proper translation says. And tomorrow we are going to explore what that song says. Just to give you a peek, that song says, God takes the powerful and brings them to earth. And takes those who are from the dust and let them sit among the princes of the world. He says, he takes the poor from the rough dust into those who are full. He says, he says to you, and I'm going to explore that with you tomorrow. He says, they have sold themselves for bread. Whilst those who are hungry are being fed with honor. Those who are full, those who've got things, they've got those things because they sold themselves for bread. Aba balambileyo basuthi sisidima. We'll explore all of those things so that when you become an agent of God in transforming this church, you are able then to know what it is that you are called for. My concluding call to you today is simply this. If you want to be an agent for God, know the sacred responsibility. God bless you.